And I'd like to introduce Tony Hope. He is the chef, executive chef and owner of the Wild Morel Restaurant here in Brevard. He's originally from West Virginia, and he did his culinary training at Johnson & Wales in Charleston. He's worked at a multitude of restaurants, including the Hank Seafood in Charleston, the Greenbrier in West Virginia, and the Bayona Restaurant in New Orleans. Anybody been to any of those?
Uh-huh.
So then you know.
I'm from West Virginia too.
Are you? What part?
About 20 miles southwest of Parkersburg
Yeah,
in Wirt County.
yeah.
Are you from Charleston?
I'm from Huntington.
Huntington.
Yeah,
Sounds
I actually
right.
lived in Parkersburg for a year, for a full year when my dad had a job there when I was 3 or 4, I think. Yeah.
Well, I went to the Greenbrier years ago, and it was
Wow.
just an awesome, awesome experience. Beautiful. Tony has 25 years of experience creating menus, buying and running restaurants, and designing top-level kitchens. He brings a distinctive flavor to Brevard food scene, and which includes both an Italian and a French flavor. So we look forward to learning all about herbs from Tony this morning.
Sure, thank
Welcome.
you. So I'd like to thank Rose for organizing this and inviting me here. I appreciate that. Today I think that I kind of want to talk about fresh herbs from my experience and the importance in high-level cooking and farm-to-table cuisine. It's essential. So the way we sort of categorize herbs in the restaurant and, throughout my cooking career is we have soft herbs and then we have our hard herbs. And we apply them a little differently. We use our soft herbs for enhancing flavors, for vibrancy, for freshness. We use our hard herbs more for infusion. So the soft herbs are applied at the end of the recipes for that flavor, and vibrancy and freshness and things like that at the very end. So you don't really want to cook those herbs into your recipes. Hard herbs, on the other hand, you want to put those into your cooking recipes and let them infuse the flavor into those dishes. So by soft herbs, I'm talking about basil, I'm talking about chives, parsley, tarragon, dill, cilantro. Hard herbs, I'm talking about oregano, thyme, rosemary, sage, and those are the herbs that we infuse into soups and stocks, our ragouts, anything that's slow cooked. We also use them for marinating. We make a lot of marinades in the restaurant, so those herbs go into those type things. The soft herbs, some of the applications are for garnishes, for pastas, salsas. We make a lot of or salsas, as far as relishes and things like that. Fresh soft herbs are good for that. We do a lot of compound butters using herbs. I think that's an application that gets overlooked. So with compound butters, what we do is we have recipes, for instance, where we'll take roasted garlic, fresh herbs, and then soften some butter and whip that into the butter, and then roll it out into logs and put it in the freezer. So if you look at my freezer at the restaurant, I've got tons, because there's so many different uses for that. You can finish sauces with them. You can also, let's say you have grilled or roasted meats or fish. You can just put a little knob of that on top of it and pop it in the oven for a second, let it melt over. So that's a really good application. Also, oils. We buy so many herbs at the restaurant that sometimes you can't always use them up in time, right? So we're not going to throw anything away, right? So we're going to, let's say we have rosemary, let's say we have thyme, let's say we have sage, in any herb, for instance, we can infuse that into an oil, okay? And then refrigerate that, and it has a shelf life of, 6 months. So, and we can use that to finish off dishes and recipes. So, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So if I infuse oil, like olive oil, and I'll put rosemary in it and some garlic, does that need to be refrigerated?
Absolutely, 100%. Yes, and also anything that you need to make sure that it's rinsed very well and also patted dry before you infuse it, and then you need to bring it up to temp, not to a boil, but just bring your oil up to temp and let it simmer, for 20 minutes so it infuses the flavors into the oil.
And leave the herbs in the bottle, you can do that, or
No. Strain it out. Strain it out.
because you've seen bottles that they sell and they'll have a closed.
Yeah, no, don't do that. Strain it out, and then label it what it is. And, have your thyme oil, rosemary oil, even garlic oil.
Tony, we love the questions, but repeat them because we can't always hear the questions.
Sure.
Hear them pretty good, it's just the question.
So she was asking about infusing herbs into oils. The way I do it is I will steep the herbs. Make sure you clean your herbs really well. Make sure you pat them dry, and then steep them in the oil. You said olive oil, that's fine. I would suggest a neutral oil like grapeseed or canola or vegetable oil, because you don't need to use olive oil for that. Olive oil is expensive. You don't need, you want a neutral oil so you get more of the herb flavor into your oil, right? So it tastes like rosemary, it tastes like thyme, it tastes like, and also when you're steeping your herbs into oil, those are for your hard herbs, right? Your soft herbs, if you're going to make oil out of your soft herbs, if you've been to a restaurant and you've seen oils that are colored like green, things like that, those oils are made with soft herbs. So if you have a basil oil, a chive oil, a parsley oil, there's a different technique to making those oils than there are the hard herb oils, because all you're doing is steeping those oils in there. They're not going to change color much, but they're going to pick up that flavor of thyme or rosemary or sage or whatever. The soft herb oils you're going to want to put into a blender, okay, and then strain them out through cheesecloth or a coffee filter. That's how you get that clear, green, colorful oil. So you're going to take your fresh herbs into the blender with your oil, and then put a coffee filter in a strainer, pour that in there. It's going to take forever. Just go away, have lunch, do whatever you need to do. Come back in about 6-8 hours, and all that will strain through, and then you'll have that beautiful colored oil. So you'll label that basil oil, tarragon oil, chive oil.
Do you need to refrigerate that?
Absolutely. Anything that you infuse, you're going to need to refrigerate. Okay?
How long does the soft herb need to sit in that neutral oil, like you said, canola or grapeseed?
It doesn't sit. You put it in the blender.
Okay.
You just put it in the blender. It doesn't need to. It's not. You're not steeping those soft herbs into it. You're steeping the hard herbs, not the soft herbs. Soft herbs go into a blender, and then they get strained immediately through a coffee filter.
But just to be clear, the herbs go into the blender with the oil.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Then you
herbs in, oil over, cover it, blend it, strain it, and it's simple as that. Then refrigerate it. Put
Kind of basic proportions of herb to oil.
half and half.
And on the hard herbs? Same?
Yeah. It's so if I have a blender and I'm doing soft herbs, I'm gonna put all my herbs in there. and then I'm gonna cover it just to the top with oil. With the hard herbs, doesn't really matter. I mean, the more the better, actually. You're still covering it up with, but you're steeping it in there. The more herbs you have in there, the more flavor you can get out of it.
You said steep, and you also said bring them to temp. These are the hard herbs. What do you mean? How long do you steep? What does bring to temp mean?
Okay, so you're gonna simmer it, and you're gonna wanna go for at least an hour.
Simmer it for at least an hour.
Yeah. In the oil. Yeah. That's how you're gonna extract the flavor from the herbs, and then strain that as well. And when I mean strain, everyone, if you're working with herb oils, you should always have a fine strainer, Chinois fine, but the finest strainer you have.
Cheesecloth's okay.
Cheesecloth's better, but also strainer. So have your strainer, put the cheesecloth in it, go through that, or coffee filter, as I said.
And then, once you've done that, it goes in the refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're gonna use it, you bring it out and let it come to room temperature.
You're gonna have to, because it's gonna solidify, it's gonna congeal. But yeah, as soon as you bring it out, let it come to room temperature, use it, and then refrigerate it.
Do you have to limit how many herbs you put in other words? if
No.
you do parsley and sage and-
They can't do that in the back.
I think it's, if you're gonna combine herbs to make an oil, you can have an herb oil, sure, but it's gonna be convoluted. I mean, I like it a little more refined. I like to know if I have rosemary oil or thyme oil or sage oil,
Yeah.
basil oil, parsley oil, chive oil, so I can get the distinct flavors of that oil. I mean, why put them all together when you can make each individual one, right? Yeah.
And good as a salad dressing.
What's that?
Infused oil like that is good as a salad dressing.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I make a salad dressing with thyme brown butter. So I'll make a thyme brown butter and then and turn that into a vinaigrette. So the sky's the limit, really. But yeah, the application of those oils, once you have them and you're using, excess herbs to make them. So what you can do is you can put them into your marinades. Okay, if you're marinating chicken or fish or steaks, you can also put them into your salad dressings, your vinaigrettes. Okay, so the applications for those types of things is endless, and the butters too. I think that's really important. Having those butters in your freezer, using up your herbs from your garden. You can make those things. You can make a year's worth in advance, just using up your herbs from your garden, right?
Use fresh and dried herbs.
No. So, I think everybody here probably grew up in a household with a pantry that had a whole bunch of herb little things that were decades old, probably passed down through generations of people, and still haven't been used. So yeah, throw all that out. Spices are different, but as far as herbs, I think master gardeners, I'm sure you all have your own little herb gardens and things like that. So that's what you want to use. I mean, there's really no point to using any of those dried herbs. I mean, they don't really add anything to the recipe. They don't have any flavor. They're really just collecting dust. So let's, yeah, that's why we're all talking today about fresh herbs, because that's what we want to use in our food. I'm sorry.
How long will this last in the refrigerator?
Long time. Yeah. Long time. She asked how long these infused oils, or if we're talking butters, last in the refrigerator. Butters you want to freeze, compound butters you want to freeze, and you can blend herbs in the butters, and I would recommend it. So oils I would like to keep singular. butters, I mean, I have 1,000 different compound butter recipes that I use fresh herbs in, that, you know, for different applications. So those go in the freezer, and the oils can just be refrigerated.
For how long? That's what the question was that they didn't hear.
How long in the fridge? 6 months, did you say?
A minimum 6 months. Yeah, as long as you're preparing them and you have nice, clean, fresh herbs and you're treating them properly, yeah, they'll last for a long time.
Oxygen sealed container.
Yeah, yeah. What I do is, at the restaurant, what we do is we put them in squeeze bottles, and then put plastic over take the top off, put plastic over it, and then put the top back on, and store them that way. So they're sealed. But so that's a good way, good way to store them. 32-ounce containers, plastic lid is a good way to store those herbs. So.
Shelf life is 6 months.
Minimum. You know, I mean, anything in the freezer is obviously going to have a longer shelf life. So, yeah, I don't know how big your herb gardens are, how much, but
Would you use fresh tarragon for oil or butter?
both. I think all the herbs that you guys would be growing in your gardens would be used for both. Tarragon is used in a lot of French cuisine. You know, a little bit of tarragon butter in your French omelet would be lovely. So, and then a tarragon oil, you know, with a salad dressing, you know, would be nice, or a potato salad would be really nice. You know.
You do anything with sage? I started growing all this sage and then now I don't know what to do with it.
It grows like a weed, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a lot myself.
It doesn't die.
No, it's all year round practically.
Nice, nothing killed it.
Yeah, sage is a powerful herb. I mean, it definitely, and a little bit goes a long way. So it's so prolific, it's hard to deal with, and it's not one of the most popular herbs for cooking. It does have its place in things. I mean, one nice thing to do with it is to, like I said, make sage brown butter. That's really lovely with poultry dishes, you know, a little drizzle over poultry dishes, or, you know, fish, you know, salmon, you know, things like that. A little sage brown butter is nice. You can also fry it for a garnish is nice if you're entertaining. But yeah, sage is one of those tough ones. There's a lot of it, and fewer applications for it.
Unless you make sage sticks and sell them.
I haven't heard of that, but good luck with that.
I had a quick question.
Let me know how that goes.
Oh, I'm sage in my house more than once.
Yeah.
The brown butter, is that just you melt the butter and you wash it very carefully? And then
Yes.
it
Stand in
breaks
front of it, and once it gets to the browning point before it goes too far, pull it.
And then you just let it cool
Yeah.
and then make it into a roll.
Oh, no. We're talking about, so let me clarify. She's asking about compound butters. Compound butters, there's no heat application, okay? So your butter comes to a room temperature, okay? It goes into the mixer with a whip. You could use a paddle, but I use a whip. And then you add all your other ingredients into that mixing bowl, and then you whip it, and then you store it however you see fit. But what I do is I put saran wrap, plastic wrap, put the butter out along it, and then roll it up. crank down the ends, and then and freeze it.
But the brown butter, you heat that.
Brown butter's heated. So if I'm making you a trout almondine with brown butter right now,
Yes, please.
okay? So I got the trout in one pan, searing. I flip the trout. I put the butter in the other pan. Let that it melts first, and then it starts to sizzle. At that point, I'm going to add my sage into it.
Oh,
Okay, and then I'm going to pull it off, and I'm going to pour it right over the cooked
So
fish.
the brown butter is.
Right, a la
instant.
minute.
Yes, it's not something.
It's instant. Yeah, it happens in seconds.
It's not something you put in the fridge and use later.
No.
Gotcha.
No.
That's what I was.
No. Yeah, okay, so yeah, separate that. Okay. Any other questions?
Can you name any other dishes that sage can go into? Turkey dressing?
Okay, so we make a lot of, she's asking about dishes that sage go into. Not a lot. We use sage, like I said, for brown butter. That's a really popular one. Marinades, you can put sage, rosemary, thyme, oregano, again, those hard herbs. Blend those up with some oil and garlic, maybe a touch of Dijon mustard, maybe a little white wine. That makes a great all-purpose marinade for roasting pork, pork loin, chicken, things of that nature. That's a good all-purpose marinade. So I definitely use sage in that.
You make sausage.
Sausage, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, absolutely. Garlic and sage, and we don't make a lot of sausage at the restaurant, but for those that do, yeah, that's a great application. So you'd almost treat it the same way you would the compound butter. Yeah.
Well, we use it some as a topping for some of our bisque.
Yeah, so I do a butternut squash bisque. Any of those nice fall bisques and things like that, cauliflower, you can use, heirloom carrot bisque, a lot of those bisques. What we'll do is we'll do a little sage brown butter, and then we'll also do some fried sage leaves that are crispy and crunchy, and then we'll garnish our soups with that.
If you make butternut raviolis, it's really good to have
Sage brown butter.
sage brown butter.
Yeah, for sure. So sage brown butter with any of those fall pasta dishes is definitely a good application. So
Would avocado oil be good for the infusing? I'm just getting away from seed oils, and so I don't really have a lot of those. I have avocado and I have olive.
yeah, you can use avocado oil. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can use any oil really. So yeah.
You said canola earlier.
I'm just not using a lot of seed oils.
I think neutral oils are the best. So canola, vegetable, grapeseed. Those are all I consider neutral oils. So just a little bit of a backstory. So when I was a kid, my great-grandmother and great-grandfather had they were very self-sustainable. They had a small farm. My great-grandmother grew all of her own vegetables. She had an herb garden. She did a lot of canning, and and they preserved everything for the entire year. This is up in West Virginia, so very Appalachia. But what stood out to me my mom, you know, didn't cook that much. I mean, she worked in the hospital and she was gone at 6 o'clock every morning. So she didn't cook a lot, but my great grandmother, I spent a lot of time in the kitchen with her. And that's what she did. She worked that farm and she worked you know, she created a lot of things in the kitchen. So, but one of the things that I remember most is her applying all the herbs from her herb garden into her recipes. So I thought I might share a few of those with you, if that's okay. So the things that I remember most were she did a ham every Sunday, and she would take Madeira, which is a fortified wine. She would take Madeira and she would reduce that with brown sugar, okay? And she would reduce it down to a glaze, and then when that was finished, she would add fresh basil to it, and she would put that with her as a glaze for the ham, which is kind of unique. I've never seen anybody else do it, but I tell you, it works. Yeah. Of course, in the summertime, she liked to grow silver queen corn, which is one of my favorites. And then there was always fresh sliced beefsteak tomatoes on the table with cucumbers. She would have red onion, a little red wine vinegar, and fresh basil. So she put fresh basil in her silver queen corn and the cucumber salad, believe it or not. So yeah, that's...
Wait, what do you mean? She would put the basil in while she was boiling the corn?
No, it was a, like,
Oh, it was the butter.
No, she would put butter and fresh basil just at the... Always remember, all the fresh herbs are used at the end of the recipe. Okay? So the soft herbs are not cooked in with the dishes. They're applied at the very last thing that you do to add the vibrancy and the freshness and enhance the dish. Okay? Parsley, she had fresh dug new potatoes. So butter, salt, pepper, fresh parsley at the end of that. That's a sweet potatoes. We were talking about sage. That's where that sage butter comes in with sweet potatoes, roasted sweet potatoes or mashed sweet potatoes. That's a good finish to the the sage butter is a good finish to that. Or even the fried sage, crisped up over top of those sweet potatoes as a garnish with some brown butter or just regular butter in general, sea salt. She used a lot of, rosemary and thyme as marinades with chicken, roast chicken, pork loin. Those are good. And also, I think talking about stock is really important too. And it's not hard. I mean, it's very simple. Anytime that if you have a whole chicken at home and you're breaking down a whole chicken for whatever reason, if you have, leftover, throw it in a pot with some rosemary and thyme, celery, carrot, onion, a little bit of peppercorn, bay leaf if you have it, and just let it simmer, and strain it out. And put that in your fridge and use it for your soup bases, for, a variety of different things.
I made that, but one I put in the freezer, one I put in the fridge. How long does the fridge one last for chicken stock?
I'm going to say a week to be safe,
Okay.
but no longer. I wouldn't go over a week. Yeah.
But the freezer one's okay.
Freezer one's good.
Have you ever made stock from shrimp shells?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and you roast
I've made stock from everything.
and you roast them first, Tony? Do you roast them?
Yes. You actually, you can roast them or you can sear them.
Yeah.
Either way, searing's quicker.
Roast them and it changes the flavor.
Yeah, it does. You can also do that in your stock pot. You can just put a little oil in the bottom of the stock pot, add the shells, and get them seared really well. It's the same thing. It's just quicker. And then add all your other stock components.
Best gumbo I ever
Yeah, that's for sure. Anytime you do that, anytime you roast shellfish, shells, lobster, crab, shrimp, all of it, you're going to get a more flavorful, for your whatever recipe you're using. She was asking about roasting shrimp shells to make. We're talking about making stock. You can make stock from most things, anything. But if you're making a shellfish stock, roasting or searing your shells as the first step before you add your other components is going to infuse more flavor into that stock. Okay, that high heat is going to extract the flavors from those shells, make it taste more like shrimp, make it taste more like crab or lobster or shellfish in general. Same with anything too. If you're going to make chicken stock and you want to roast those chicken bones first, you're going to get deeper flavored, more intense stock. Okay?
Can you talk some about bone broth? I was making beef stew, and I had marrow bones, so I did roast them, and with some veggies, and it really, really changed the whole flavor. A much deeper flavor in the broth. And then I felt like an idiot because somebody said, well, don't you just do bone broth all the time? No, I don't. Or if I do, I would take a piece of, a whole chicken, for instance, and I'd cook it till it's nothing but gelatinous glue. Just the cartilage has, given up the ghost. That's a kind of bone broth, right?
Yeah. So in order to get the most out of any bone broth that you're going to do, let's say it's pork, chicken, lamb, beef, doesn't matter. You want to roast the bones at a high heat because what you're going for is caramelization, okay? So just put them in a 300-degree oven is not the same as roasting them at high heat and getting them caramelized and sizzled so they're becoming darker, And then you want to do the same thing with you're always going to use what's called mirepoix. So that's celery, carrots, onions, and leeks. That's your mirepoix for making any bone broth base. Okay? You're also going to want to caramelize and roast your carrots and your onions. Okay? So getting some color on those things as well before they go into the stock pot. So let's say you got your stock pot, you got your bones, they're roasting, you got your onions caramelizing with your carrots. Okay? When those things are all completed, they all go into the stock pot. Your onions, your celery, your leeks go in raw. Okay? Because if you caramelize those ingredients, they're going to get bitter. You don't want that. If you caramelize your carrots and your onions, they get sweeter, right? You want that. So your white mirepoix, which is what I call the celery and the leeks, those go in raw. All your herbs, your rosemary, your thyme, parsley always goes into bone broths. Okay, so those are your three main herbs. Peppercorns, a few pinched peppercorns always goes in there. Garlic always goes in there. Right? Oh. No. Yeah. Garlic is okay to put in there because you want to infuse a little bit of garlic flavor in there. But yeah, the Holy Trinity. And then if you're just making a straight base, if you want it a little richer, like if you said you were making beef stew, yeah, then you're going to want a little tomato paste in there, your little tomato product. Okay? Because anytime you're making a rich bone broth, you want a little tomato product in there. Whether it's fresh scrapped tomatoes or it's just a little tomato paste. Okay? But you want tomato if you're making a rich bone broth. If you're making a light one, you leave out the tomato paste. Also, the longer you cook it, the more rich it's going to be. So if you want a light chicken stock for light, recipes, then you make a Fond Blonde, or if you want a richer one for stews and ragouts and things like I make a lot, or even reduction sauces, then you make a richer one. You let that go. I let mine go for 2 days. You know,
Simmer it for 2 days?
Or longer.
yeah. But I make them in pots that are this
Yeah.
tall. So I don't want it to reduce at all. So I want it to stay the same level in the pot, but I want to see bubbles very lightly, and I want to see it go for 2 days, and I want to see the color get darker and darker and darker, but also stay clear. If you don't ever boil it, because what you're doing is you're clouding it up, and the impurities from whatever are going to emulsify in that broth. I like my broth to come out super rich and flavorful after a couple of days, but also clear. You know, not cloudy.
So you put a lid on it?
I don't. I have a big hood, so I don't need to do that.
It's more reducing then, because it's
You have to have the exact right temperature in such a big volume. It doesn't want to reduce as much as if you were doing it at home in a small pot. So I don't have that problem because I do it in such volume.
I can't.
10 gallons of something.
No, you can. So it's not necessary to put a lid on it, and like I said, I mean, you can just let it go slow, you know, throughout the day. You know, you don't need to go as intense as what I do for the restaurant, but you can just do it at home for the day, and just if it reduces a little bit, just add a little bit of water. Just keep doing that. You'll still get to where you need to be by just keeping that level up with just a cup of water every once in a while. And it'll still infuse.
Can we ask non-herb questions?
That's why I'm here.
So, do you ever use cheese rinds in your cooking?
Every day.
What do you use them for?
So, well, let me clarify. I use Parmesan cheese rinds. I don't really use any other ones. Parmesan cheese rinds are really important to keep those. Because let's say you're making, I'm sure everybody here has made spaghetti sauce, right? Okay? So, you know, you get all the ingredients in your spaghetti sauce. It's time to let it simmer for a couple hours and walk away. Throw the cheese rind in there. Because you can always fish it out. Or you can always, if you're not comfortable doing that, wrap it up in cheesecloth and tie it off with butcher twine and drop it in there. And you can do that with anything. You know, you're making a chicken noodle soup, you're making anything that you're making that has a broth and you want to throw that cheese rind in there, throw it in there. It gives off a wonderful flavor. There's a certain brininess to it. You get a little bit of hint of Parmesan in your broth, but it's not cheesy, but you get that essence. Yeah, that's what you want to do. So always save those. Yeah, tons of applications. What I do a lot at the restaurant is, well, number one, we do pizzas from time to time. So we have a white sauce that we do our pizzas. So that white sauce that you're going to see is infused with Parmesan cheese rinds. So I take all my scrap Parmesan cheese rinds. Whenever we grade them down to the end, we put them in Ziploc bags, put them in a freezer, okay? And then I pull them out. I'll put them in the ragouts. I'll make a cream sauce with them for the pizzas, for fettuccine Alfredo. That's all cheese rind-based sauces, all of them. Because we have so many that we use them in everything, yeah.
So I have a lot of Gruyere rinds.
Yeah,
That's our favorite.
same thing, yeah, same thing, yeah. I wouldn't do them with all cheese rinds, but yeah, Gruyere for sure, Parmesan especially, yeah.
Any more great-grandmother recipes?
I did have a couple more. Well, of course, you know, my great-grandmother was known for making sauce. So she made a wonderful spaghetti sauce and or bolognese that I still make to this day, and she put the Parmesan rinds in there. Also meatloaf, you know, she put a lot of fresh herbs in her meatloaf, which was really nice on inside and out. You know, she would finish it, so that was nice. And soup beans, you can't talk about Appalachian cuisine without talking about soup beans. So yeah, so she would put ham hock and rosemary, thyme, oregano, you know, would all go in her soup beans. So, you know, so a lot of you know, when you have an herb garden, you're going to have herbs. You got to use them. So yeah, you got to. There's lots of things that you can get creative with and find for your herbs, and that's why I wanted to talk today a little bit about preserving them too, because I'm not a fan of drying them. You know, that's one thing we haven't talked about. A lot of people say, okay, we got an excessive amount of herbs. I've got an abundance of herbs, so we're just going to dry them out. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Number one, I'm sure some of you do that. You know, you can preserve them that way, but they lose their luster over time. Just know that. Preserving the fresh herbs the best you can into the oils and the compound butters and all the things that you can, you know, preserve them that way and freeze them and things like that. You can always pull them out and use them. You know, you can make herb sauces and freeze them. You know, I mean, you guys all have a card. I put my favorite herb sauce on the back of your card. You can make all those types of things ahead of time and freeze them in small quantities and just pull them out. You know, you make a quick dinner. You would throw some chicken on the grill. You know, pull one of those. You know, at my house, what I do is a lot of times make those things and put them into ice trays. Yeah, so you can just pop one out. You know, don't do that with the butter; they don't pop out. You need to put the butter in Saran wrap, but yeah, but ice trays is a good thing. You know, that recipe that I gave you, or if you're making, you know, some other popular herb sauces are chimichurri. I mean, that's a huge one. Pesto, you know. Yeah.
Pandemic, when I was living in St. Pete and they were delivering fresh vegetables once a week. I was picking them up from an organic place and all these herbs. And so I did a lot of carrot top pesto, which is delicious, and froze it, and chimichurri, lots of chimichurri.
Yeah. I've seen recipes for carrot top chimichurri. Yeah.
I have a question about bay leaves. I thought they were growing bay plant, and then talk about harvesting them in the peak of summer, you know, for most flavor or whatever. And do you use those raw? Or do you
Yeah.
fresh, or
It's just best to use them raw. Absolutely. No, raw bay is the best. You know, but if you're not, the thing is though, you know, you're using bay leaves to infuse into a broth or a soup, or you know, so there's not a lot of applications for it. That's why they're mostly dried. But if you have fresh bay, use it.
Do those bay leaves last forever?
It's like any other dried herb. You know, they lose their luster. I mean, drying them out, I mean, you know, the longer that you can, even if you freeze dry them, they're still going to lose their, you know, their profile over time.
Other than garnish, can you give some uses for parsley?
Parsley? So herbs are nice for garnish. I would only garnish a dish with herbs if the actual herbs were used in the dish as part of the recipe. So let's say that I have a dish that I have fresh parsley in that's enhancing that dish, that's essential for that dish, then I might garnish it with a little bit of parsley as well.
That's the only thing I know to do with it. Can you give some other suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, parsley, like I said, parsley potatoes. I grew up on those. Fresh parsley, butter, sea salt, pepper, and new potatoes, just boiled potatoes. That's a great application for parsley. But also, you know, I don't know what you cook at home, but parsley is probably one of the most versatile herbs there is. I use flat Italian leaf parsley and chop it up. Curly parsley has a much stronger flavor profile. So I use the flat Italian leaf parsley, but I put it in lots of things.
Do you make homemade, I call homemade mayonnaise and put herbs in it?
Aioli, yeah,
aioli.
yes, absolutely,
Yeah, I made a chive mayonnaise and salad, which was killer.
yeah, yeah.
They say salad, I'm a whole different animal.
Yeah, and you can, and when you make an aioli like that, you can add as much herbs as you want. The more the better, actually. The more infusion you get into that, the better it is.
Can you repeat what you were talking about on the parsley, flat versus curly,
Yeah,
the flavors?
yeah. So flat Italian leaf parsley is, if you ask any chef in any restaurant, pretty much that's going to be their preference. It's a little more delicate. It's a little milder, but it's still, parsley. Curly parsley. Y'all have been to, the steakhouses of the 70s, 80s, and everybody gets that curly parsley sprig and a lemon on their plate. Yeah. For cooking, I wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend the flat leaf Italian parsley. You see it in every grocery store. It's right next to the cilantro. You'll see the curly parsley as well. Always get the Italian flat leaf.
Easy to grow.
Very easy to grow. Yeah, it's very prolific.
It's like hard to put in words, but you say versatile. What does parsley actually add to a dish? Just to me, it tastes like grass.
Just like any other fresh herb, and it adds a vibrancy, a freshness. That's what fresh herbs do to enhance any dish. I do put a lot of thought into flavor profiles and what should go with what. I had a chef friend of mine come over, and we did a little dinner party, and we were making a lamb dish, and he's making this little herb mix with cilantro to add to the lamb. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, yeah, I'm just going to, some fresh herbs. I said, that's cilantro. I said, I don't want it with lamb. We're not doing that. So, but if I'm making an Argentinian dish, then yes, I want cilantro and green onion and flat parsley and, things like that. Like the recipe that I just gave you on the back of your card has a ton of flat leaf parsley in it. It's the main component. And
Rosemary the only herb for lamb?
yeah, don't you say mint?
No, I didn't.
No, do not say it. Rosemary, thyme. Yeah, rosemary, thyme. Sage actually goes with lamb. Yeah, rosemary is my favorite. Yeah, I make a marinade that has rosemary, thyme. It's a standard marinade that I make for a lot of roasted meats. So it's rosemary and thyme, roasted garlic. I always roast my garlic because I like to take the bitterness out of it, and I like that texture. Olive oil, Dijon mustard, and a splash of white wine. That's like a standard marinade for me.
Spiced white wine?
No. And a splash of white wine. Yeah, and I just put that in the blender, and I just keep a bucket of it at all times. I put it with a lot of Dijon, always Dijon. Venison? Venison is a strong game meat There are a lot of preserved fruits that go really well with venison. Are you talking about for a marinade, or are you talking about as an accoutrement?
Either. It's a strong flavor, and I'm just wondering what else to put with it.
I would do a red wine marinade with venison. So you can take red wine, peppercorn, definitely garlic, and also those herbs, and infuse those together and marinate your venison with that. How do you usually cook it?
I remove all the fat and replace it with a little bit of beef fat,
Okay.
because that strong gamey flavor is in the fat. But, if you make sure you don't have any deer fat in there, it's not nearly as strong.
So are you slow cooking it? Are you stewing it? Or are you
Slow cooking mostly,
so mostly shoulder or leg or
yeah.
yeah? Well, yeah, that's like that's the Cadillac.
Well, I eat all of it, so.
We have a question back here.
No, I was gonna tell her. I also make spaghetti sauce out of ground venison. And, as long as you don't dry out the meat too much, it works out really well. And I think the tomato in the spaghetti sauce takes away the.
Also, if you add a little touch of milk to it
Yeah.
before you add your tomato.
And I've also done it where I take the steak and actually soak it in a little, the venison.
Yeah,
steak
that takes the gaminess out of it as well. Yeah,
before I cook it.
yeah. But anytime you're stewing anything with sauces like that, if you before you add your tomato product or your stock, a little bit of milk in there, that'll also take that gaminess away before you start to slow cook it. Yeah. And nobody will ever know that's in there, including you. But it does serve a purpose. It breaks down the enzymes in the meat, right? And it also takes away some of that gaminess.
So how long do you soak it?
What do you mean?
Well, you have your venison and then you're soaking it in
No, we're talking about slow cooking.
yeah.
So if you're making she's talking about spaghetti sauce with ground venison. Say we're making a venison stew with diced or cubed shoulder or leg or whatever. If you're braising it, say you're making a stew, you're going to start with your components, but before you add any stock or your tomato or whatever, if you put depending on how much you make, a cup of milk in there, and just let that cook for 5 minutes, it helps break it down for your stew, and it also helps with the gaminess for venison.
You touched on, it seems like a lot of the standard herbs, which chances are almost every one of us have. Is there an herb that you would say, it's not the most recognized herb, but this is one you probably should try? You talked a little bit about tarragon, and there are some of those herbs that, that's one you should probably give it a try.
I mean, there's savory, that's used in a lot of country French cooking that I think is pretty cool. Sorrel. Sorrels is probably not mentioned a lot. And the reason some of those herbs are not mentioned is because you don't see them in the grocery store, but you can easily grow them just like anything else. I mean, you can grow sorrel just like you can anything else. So that's pretty cool.
Sorrel looks like a big weed.
Yeah. But it's really good. I mean, a sorrel cream sauce with salmon is like super, super classic French. So yeah, I think that'd be two that I can think of. And those you can grow just like you would grow parsley or basil in your garden. Chervil? Chervil is pretty. I mean, I love chervil. It just doesn't bring a lot to the table as far as like in your recipes. A lot of people, a lot of fancy chef restaurants. I mean, not so much anymore, but used to put a little ploosh of chervil on top of some of the dishes and to make it look pretty. But
It's okay as a garnish.
What about
yeah,
sumac?
sumac. That's
Is that considered an herb or is that a spice?
another spice. Yeah, that's used in a lot of Middle Eastern cooking, I believe. Yeah.
We have another question over here.
Yes, on the recipe you gave us, if leftovers refrigerate for, how long will it last?
It'll last 3 to 5 days if you refrigerate it. It's got the olive oil in there, so that's gonna help preserve it a little bit.
4 or 5 days, okay,
3 to 5 days
3 to 5.
safely. Yeah.
And then there was a question back there.
Going back to the stock, I have trouble with my gas cooktop staying low enough that it doesn't come to a boil. What do you think about using a crock pot to do stock?
I've never used a crock pot, but I wouldn't see why you couldn't.
It doesn't really, it's so low, it's such a low heat, it doesn't simmer though. It just,
I really feel like if you have a gas stove, you should be able to get it adjusted. Let me ask you a couple questions. What size pot are you using?
A large stock pot?
A large meaning like
No, not
3
the real big.
3 gallons,
Probably 12 quart maybe.
12 quarts. So 3 gallons. You should be able to get that adjusted to where you're not having a problem.
Put it on a different eye.
Yeah, maybe try a different eye, but you just need a small flame. Yeah, as a matter of fact, you should have less trouble with the gas stove than you would with an electric stove. So just play around with that flame and try to get it as low as you can, and then just let it go. The problem with using a lid is that you're not gonna be able to control the boil. Yeah.
Can you give us some classic examples, the way you're using herbs in the restaurant, particularly like right now, when we go down to the restaurant, what we might want to order, it might be
Every single thing that, with the exception of even the salad, I mean, pretty much every single thing that you're going to see in the restaurant is going to have some element of fresh herbs. I mean, whether it's maybe you're not visibly seeing it, but I use a bundle of 3 different types of herbs in all of my stocks. So that any sauce that you see that is going to have an infusion of hard herbs, like we talked about in the beginning, or it's going to be enhanced at the very end with some fresh soft herbs. I use basil a lot. I mean, if you ask me what my favorite herb to cook with is Genovese basil, no question.
yeah, but even our steaks the bordelaise,
Yeah, the bordelaise is going to have that infusion of rosemary and thyme. A lot of times I'm going to finish my grilled meats or roasted chickens with an herb compound butter. And like I said, when I prepare those in bulk, and you can do this at home, is I whip that compound butter, and then I put it take a saran wrap, and then you just roll it up, and so it looks like a thin rolling pin, and then crank the ends down, and put it in the freezer. So what I do is I have those, and I just slice a medallion off. So take it right out of the freezer, slice a medallion off, and you got this medallion of compound butter. You take a steak off the grill, put that on it, let it melt over top of it, or roast chicken, like I said, a piece of fish, anything. So those are all, and it's endless the different combinations that you can use. It's endless. You know, right now I have a dish with mussels that I steam in broth with white wine and roasted garlic, but I have a Calabrian chili butter. So I have, that's got roasted garlic, lots of fresh, soft herbs in it, lemon juice, olive oil, roasted garlic, and Calabrian chilies, all chopped up real fine, infused into the butter. And then when the mussels are about to open, I put a knob of that butter in there, swirl it into the broth, and then boom, serve it with some baguette, and you're good to go.
I can attest, it's heavenly.
Yeah.